Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Way to Fluency. I'm Clara.
And I'm David. We're so happy you're here today because we're going to talk about something every language learner wants: more vocabulary.
That's right. Vocabulary is like the fuel of a car. Without it, the car, or in this case, your language, just doesn't move.
Exactly. You can have perfect grammar, you can pronounce words beautifully, but if you don't know the words you need, you can't express yourself. And that can be very frustrating.
So today, we're going to share with you a collection of ideas, strategies, and little tricks that will help you increase your vocabulary in any language. Not just English. These tips work for Spanish, French, Japanese, Portuguese, any language you want to learn.
We'll tell stories, we'll ask you questions, and we'll give you small challenges while you listen. So I hope you're ready to think actively and imagine yourself using these ideas in your own life.
Let's start with something that many people don't think about, your mindset. Because your attitude towards vocabulary learning will decide how fast you progress and how much you enjoy the process.
When I first started learning French, I made a mistake that I think a lot of learners make. I bought a huge dictionary and told myself, I'm going to learn every word in here.
Oh, I know where this is going.
Yes. 3 days later, I had memorized maybe 50 words and completely lost motivation.
I think most learners have a similar experience. They try to learn everything at once. But the truth is, you don't need to know every single word in the language to start speaking and understanding.
Absolutely. There's a concept called high-frequency vocabulary. These are the most common words in a language, the words you hear and use all the time in daily life.
For example, in English, the top 1,000 words make up about 85% of conversations. That means if you know those 1,000 words well, you can understand most of what people say in everyday situations.
Think about that. Instead of trying to learn 50,000 words from a dictionary, you could focus on just the most common 1,000 or 2,000 and already be able to communicate well.
So here's my first question for you, listener. What are the situations where you use or want to use your target language the most? Is it for work, travel, social conversations?
Because when you know that, you can choose which vocabulary to focus on first. If you travel a lot, you need words for airports, hotels, restaurants. If you use the language at work, you need job-specific terms.
Exactly. It's about learning smart, not just learning more.
But let's talk about another big problem. You learn new words, and then you forget them.
Yes, that's one of the most frustrating things. You spend time memorizing a word today, and tomorrow it's gone from your brain.
The reason is simple. Our brains are like use it or lose it machines. If you don't see, hear, or use the word often, your brain decides it's not important and throws it out.
That's why repetition is so important. And not just any repetition, spaced repetition. That means you review the word several times, but with more time between each review.
For example, you learn the word umbrella today. You say it out loud right away. You use it in a sentence in 5 minutes. You write it down tonight. You think about it again in 3 days. You say in conversation next week.
This keeps the word alive in your memory. There are apps like Anki or Quizlet that can help you do this automatically, but you can also do it with a notebook.
And the important thing is to bring the word back before you forget it completely. That's when your memory gets stronger.
Here's something you can try right now. Think of a new word you learned in the last week. Can you remember it without looking at your notes? If you can't, maybe you didn't review it enough.
Now, I want to share one of the most powerful tips for remembering vocabulary. Learn words in context, not in isolation.
Yes. If you learn apple as just a fruit, you might forget it. But if you learn it in a sentence like, I eat an apple every morning, you give it a story, a place in your memory.
Our brains love stories. They love connections. When you tie a word to an image, a situation, or an emotion, it becomes much easier to remember.
I remember when I learned the Italian word gatto, which means cat. I learned it because I saw a beautiful cat sitting on my neighbor's balcony. Every time I think of gatto, I see that cat in my mind.
I had the same thing happen in Japanese. I learned the word arigato, thank you, because the first time someone said it to me, I had just helped them find a lost wallet. That emotional moment locked the word in my brain.
So here's your next challenge. When you learn a new word, try to connect it to a real experience or create a mental image for it. The more personal, the better.
And you can even make up silly or strange stories to remember words. This is called visualization.
Yes. For example, if you want to remember the French word for sunflower, tournesol, you could imagine a giant sunflower turning its head to follow the sun.
The stranger or funnier the image, the more likely it is to stick. I once taught a student the German word Schmetterling, butterfly, by telling her to imagine a butterfly wearing a helmet and flying into battle. She never forgot it.
It works because your brain pays attention to unusual things. Ordinary, boring images disappear quickly, but unusual ones stay.
So, as you listen today, think about the last word you struggled to remember. Could you make a funny or dramatic story for it?
Let's also talk about the idea of active learning. Many people think they're learning just because they're listening or reading, but that's not always true.
Right. Passive exposure is good, but you need to use the words actively to make them stick.
That means speaking them, writing them, or at least saying them out loud to yourself.
When I was learning Spanish, I made it a habit to talk to myself about what I was doing. If I was cooking, I'd say in Spanish, I cut the tomato, I boil the water, I add the salt.
That's such a good habit because it connects the word to a real action you're doing, and it makes review part of your normal life.
Yes, and you don't need a teacher or partner for this. You can practice anytime.
Exactly.
That's why I always tell my students, the more you bring the language into your daily life, the faster your vocabulary grows.
And finally, before we move to our next set of ideas, I want to mention something important. Don't be afraid of making mistakes with new words.
Yes, that fear is dangerous because it stops you from using what you know.
If you only say words when you're sure they're correct, you'll speak much less. And that means you'll practice much less.
So take risks. Use the new word, even if you're not 100% sure. Often, the person you're speaking with will understand you and might even correct you, which is a free lesson.
And those moments are actually very powerful for memory.
Exactly.
You'll remember the correction because it happened in a real conversation, not in a textbook.
So, to summarize this first part, focus on the most useful words for your needs. Review with spaced repetition. Learn in context, not isolation. Use personal images or stories to remember. Be active, not just passive. And don't be afraid to make mistakes.
If you start with these principles, your vocabulary will already grow faster, and you'll enjoy the process much more.
You know, Clara, one of the most common things I hear from learners is, I don't have enough time to study.
Oh, yes. People think they need to sit at a desk for an hour every day with a textbook open. And when they can't do that, they just do nothing.
Exactly. But the truth is vocabulary can be learned in small pieces of time.
Right.
If you only have 5 minutes, you can still learn something new, and 5 minutes every day is much better than 0 minutes every day.
That's why I like the idea of micro-learning. It means using the little pockets of time in your day to practice.
Like when you're waiting for the bus, or making tea, or standing in line at the supermarket.
Exactly. In those moments, you can review a few words, repeat sentences in your head, or try to describe what you see around you in your target language.
Here's a fun example. Let's say you're waiting for your coffee at a cafe. Look around. Maybe you see a table, chairs, a menu, sugar, cups, people talking. Do you know all those words in your target language?
If not, look them up later and write them down. You just turned an ordinary wait into a vocabulary lesson.
And here's a tip. If you carry a small notebook or use a note app on your phone, you can keep a word diary. Every time you find a new word you want to remember, write it down immediately.
I've done this for years, and my phone is full of little notes like Spanish, la estanteria, shelf, or French, le parapluie, umbrella.
And the best part is that these words are things you actually wanted to say in real life. That makes them much more useful than random vocabulary from a list.
Now, another technique I love is labeling.
Oh, yes.
When I was learning French, I put sticky notes all over my apartment. On the fridge, it said refrigerateur. On the door, port. On the mirror, miroir.
It sounds simple, but it's powerful because you see those words every day without making a big effort.
And you can take it further. You can even change the language on your phone, your computer, or your social media apps to your target language.
I remember the first time I changed my phone to Portuguese. Suddenly, I had to learn words like settings, configurações, and battery, bateria. It was like a constant mini lesson.
And because you're interacting with these words in real situations, they stick.
But here's something important. The words you choose to learn should connect to your interests.
Absolutely. If you love cooking, learn cooking vocabulary. If you love football, learn football vocabulary.
When I was learning Italian, I became obsessed with Italian recipes. I learned words like farina, flour, olio di oliva, olive oil, impasto, to knead.
And I bet you never forgot them because they were connected to something you enjoyed.
Exactly. So here's a challenge for you. Listener, think of a hobby or passion you have. Now, imagine you can only talk about it in your target language. What words would you need? Write those down and start learning them.
We also can't forget about the power of media, music, movies, podcasts.
Yes, but I think a lot of learners use media passively. They watch a movie in English, but they don't pay attention to the words.
To make media work for vocabulary, you need to be active. That means pausing, repeating, and sometimes writing down new words.
For example, I once learned the Portuguese word saudade from a song. It's a feeling of deep longing or nostalgia. I still remember the melody and the emotion of that song, so the word never left my memory.
Music is perfect because the rhythm and melody make words easier to remember.
Movies and TV shows are great too. If you watch with subtitles in your target language, you can match the sound to the written word.
And if you hear a phrase you like, pause and repeat it out loud. That way, you practice pronunciation and vocabulary at the same time.
But let's not forget the simplest tool of all, speaking to yourself.
Yes, this is my favorite. Some people feel shy about speaking out loud when they're alone, but it's actually one of the best ways to learn.
Pretend you're explaining your day to someone. I woke up. I brushed my teeth. I made breakfast. I checked my email.
And when you don't know a word, you can look it up, and now it's connected to something real you wanted to say.
I do this all the time when I'm learning a new language. It keeps my brain in language mode, even if I'm not in a class or talking to someone else.
It's also a safe space to make mistakes. Nobody is listening except you.
Finally, let's talk about natural review.
Yes, because learning a word once isn't enough. You have to see it again in different situations.
If you learned the word umbrella last week and it's raining today, say it out loud in your target language. Even if you're alone, use it.
The more you use a word in real moments, the more it becomes automatic.
And that's the real goal. You want to be able to use words without stopping to think.
Which is exactly what will happen if you surround yourself with the language and practice in small, daily moments. You know, David, a lot of learners get stuck because they think, I can't speak until I know enough vocabulary.
Yes, I hear that all the time. But here's the truth. You will never know all the words. Even native speakers don't know every word in their own language.
Exactly. So the real skill is learning how to work with the words you do know.
One powerful technique is called circumlocution. It's a fancy word that means talking around a word you don't know.
Right.
Let's say you don't know the word for fridge. You can say, the big cold box where you keep milk.
People will understand you. And while you're speaking, your brain is making connections that will help you remember the real word next time.
Another advanced habit is guessing the meaning of new words from context.
Yes, this is so important. When you read or listen, you will find words you don't know. But instead of stopping immediately to check a dictionary, look at the words around it.
For example, if you hear, it was raining, so I grabbed my umbrella, you can guess that umbrella is something related to rain.
This skill is great because it makes you a more independent learner. You don't get stuck every time you see a new word.
And over time, you'll realize your brain gets better and faster at making these guesses.
Speaking of connections, there's another trick I love, building word networks.
Oh, yes. This is where you don't just learn a word by itself, but you connect it to other related words.
For example, if you learn tree, you can add branch, leaf, trunk, roots. You're creating a little family of words in your mind.
And then you can connect those families to other families. Maybe tree connects to forest, wood, lumber.
The more connections a word has in your brain, the easier it is to remember, and the easier it is to use naturally in conversation.
I think a lot of learners also underestimate the power of repetition in different ways.
Yes, if you see the same word 10 times in the exact same sentence, you might remember it for a test, but forget it in real life.
But if you see it in a song, hear it in a conversation, read it in a book, and use it yourself, that's when it becomes part of your active vocabulary.
That's why I like the idea of language recycling. It's not about memorizing once, it's about meeting the same word in new situations.
Like if you learn the word delicious, you can hear it in a cooking show, read it in a restaurant review, say it when you try a cake, and each time, the memory gets stronger.
Another advanced tip is to focus on high-frequency words.
Yes.
These are the words that native speakers use most often. Learning them gives you the biggest return on investment.
For example, in English, words like get, make, go have appear everywhere.
And what's interesting is that these simple words often have many uses and meanings.
Exactly. The word get can mean receive, become, understand, and more. If you learn one high-frequency word deeply, it can replace many less common words you don't know yet.
This connects to another strategy, learning chunks instead of single words.
Oh yes, a chunk is a group of words that often go together, like how are you doing? Or I don't think so.
These are useful because you don't have to build a sentence from zero every time. You can just use a ready-made piece.
It sounds more natural. For example, instead of learning just the word busy, learn the chunk, I've been really busy lately.
Right.
You can drop that into conversation exactly as it is, and people will understand you perfectly.
Now, I know some learners feel pressure to be perfect before speaking. But one advanced mindset is use the words you know right now, even if your grammar or vocabulary isn't complete.
Yes.
Communication is the goal. If the person understands you, that's a success.
I remember when I was learning Spanish, I couldn't remember the word for spoon. So at dinner, I asked for the thing for soup.
And they gave you a spoon, right?
Exactly. And now, I will never forget the word cuchara.
See?
Mistakes are just steps on the road to fluency.
Here's something else. The active recall method.
That's where you test yourself, right?
Yes. Instead of just reading your vocabulary list again and again, you close it and try to remember from memory.
It's harder, but it makes the memory stronger.
You can do this with flashcards, or even just by covering the translations and testing yourself.
And you can combine it with spaced repetition, reviewing words at increasing intervals so they stay in your long-term memory.
One last advanced point for today. Think in your target language as much as possible.
Yes, this is the ultimate habit. If you see a cat, don't think cat in your native language first. Think it directly in your target language.
At first, this feels slow, but over time it becomes automatic.
And when you can think directly in the language, your speaking speed and confidence go way up.
It's like removing a filter from your brain. Suddenly, the language flows more freely.
David, we've talked about how to learn and use vocabulary, but there's something learners often forget: maintaining it over time.
Yes, because it's not just about learning new words. It's about keeping them alive in your memory.
Exactly.
And here's the thing. If you don't use a word, you will probably forget it.
That's why one of the best strategies is to create daily habits that make you use your vocabulary without even thinking about it.
For example, you can describe your day to yourself in English. While you're making breakfast, you can think, I'm pouring milk into my coffee. I'm cutting some bread.
It's like turning your life into a small language learning environment. You don't need a textbook for that, just your normal activities.
Another tip I love is connecting vocabulary to emotions.
Yes, if you feel something strong when you learn a word, surprise, happiness, even frustration, your brain remembers it better.
So if you learn a funny or shocking phrase in English, try to imagine a situation where you would use it.
Like the phrase, spill the beans, which means to reveal a secret. Picture someone actually spilling beans all over the floor. It makes the expression stick in your mind.
The stronger the mental picture, the stronger the memory.
Now let's talk about immersion, but not just the move to another country kind.
Right.
You can create immersion anywhere. For example, change your phone language to English.
At first it will be strange, maybe even frustrating, but you'll see those same words every day, and they'll become part of your memory.
Another way is to follow social media accounts in English about topics you enjoy: cooking, sports, fashion, technology.
That way, you're not only learning vocabulary, but vocabulary that's relevant to your interests.
And speaking of interests, I think interest-based learning is one of the most powerful tools for long-term vocabulary growth.
Yes, if you love photography, learn the English words for lens, shutter, exposure. If you love gardening, learn watering can, soil, blossom.
Because when you learn words in a context you care about, you naturally review them. You'll watch videos, read articles, and talk about those topics.
And you won't even feel like you're studying.
Here's another strategy: conversation journaling.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's simple. After a conversation in English, write down the words or phrases you couldn't remember, or the things you wanted to say, but didn't know how.
Then look them up, write them in your journal, and try to use them next time.
This way, your vocabulary grows in a very personal, targeted way. It's exactly the language you need.
Something similar is creating a personal phrase book.
Yes. Instead of a long dictionary of words you might never use, you collect the sentences and phrases that are useful for your life.
For example, if you often order food, include phrases like, "Could I get this without onions, please?" Or "Can I have the sauce on the side?"
If you travel a lot, add, "What time does the bus leave?" Or "Do I need to book in advance?"
It's like building your own toolbox, only with tools you'll actually use.
Now, one of the challenges in long-term learning is motivation. Sometimes people start strong, but after a few months, they slow down.
That's true. One way to keep motivation high is to track your progress.
Yes.
You can write down how many new words you've learned this week, or notice that you understand a TV show without subtitles for the first time.
Those little wins remind you that you're moving forward, even if it's slow.
And slow progress is still progress, and it's often more permanent.
Another tip for keeping vocabulary active is to join a community where you can use English regularly.
That could be an online language exchange, a book club, or even a group chat with people learning the same language.
The important thing is to create situations where speaking or writing in English is normal, not a special study moment.
Yes.
When you use English socially, it stops feeling like homework and starts feeling like part of your identity.
And speaking of identity, here's something interesting. The more you see yourself as a person who speaks English, the easier it becomes to keep going.
That's true. If you think I'm just a student, you might only use English in class. But if you think I'm an English speaker, you'll naturally look for opportunities to speak.
It's a mindset shift, and it has a big effect on your habits.
And habits are what keep your vocabulary alive for years, not just weeks.
So, if we could sum it up, learn words in context, connect them to your life, use them often, and keep your motivation alive with small wins.
Yes.
Vocabulary isn't something you finish learning. It's something you grow like a garden a little every day.
And the more you enjoy the process, the more that garden will bloom.
David, many English learners think they need a huge vocabulary before they can speak confidently.
Yes, but the truth is you can have a small vocabulary and still communicate very well.
Exactly.
Confidence doesn't come only from the number of words you know. It comes from knowing how to use the words you have.
One of the most important skills here is paraphrasing.
Right.
If you don't know a word, you can describe it with other words you do know.
For example, if you forget the word umbrella, you could say the thing you use when it's raining or a rain cover.
And the other person will understand you perfectly.
Another technique is to use body language and gestures.
Yes.
Communication is more than words. It's facial expressions, tone of voice, and hand movements.
If you combine these with simple English, your message becomes much clearer.
Plus, using your body when you speak actually helps your brain remember the words better.
Something else that helps with confidence is to learn high-utility phrases, sentences you can adapt to many situations.
Like, "Could you please?" Or "I'm looking for," or "I'm not sure, but I think."
These are conversation starters and fillers that give you time to think.
And when you have time to think, you feel less nervous.
Speaking of nervousness, it's completely normal to feel it.
Yes.
Even native speakers sometimes feel nervous when they speak in public.
One trick is to prepare confidence scripts, little sets of sentences you practice until they feel automatic.
For example, if you often meet new people, practice saying, "Hi, nice to meet you. Where are you from?" And "I'm from Brazil. I work as a teacher."
Once these phrases are automatic, you don't waste energy thinking about them. You can focus on the conversation.
I also think it's important to accept mistakes.
Absolutely. If you wait until you speak perfectly, you'll never speak.
In fact, making mistakes is part of the learning process. It's how you discover what to improve.
And most people don't care if you make mistakes, as long as they understand you.
Yes. In many cases, they'll even find it charming or interesting.
Another way to keep speaking even with limited vocabulary is to learn synonyms and simpler alternatives for common words.
For example, if you forget delicious, you can say very good or tasty.
If you forget difficult, you can say hard or not easy.
This flexibility makes you more independent. You don't freeze when you can't remember a specific word.
Here's something else. Ask questions.
Yes.
If you feel stuck in a conversation, you can shift the focus to the other person.
Questions like, "What do you mean?" or "Can you give me an example?" Keep the conversation alive and give you time to think.
Plus, people usually enjoy talking about themselves.
And if you really don't understand something, don't pretend. Ask for clarification.
Exactly. You can say, "Sorry, I didn't catch that. Could you say it again?" Or, "Can you speak a little slower, please?"
Asking for repetition is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you care about understanding.
And it shows that you are participating actively in the conversation.
A fun way to practice quick thinking is to do improv speaking.
That's when you give yourself a topic and talk about it for 1 or 2 minutes without stopping.
It can be anything: your favorite food, your last weekend, your dream vacation.
The rule is, don't stop talking even if you have to simplify or use and a lot.
Over time, your brain learns to find words faster, and you feel more comfortable improvising.
I also recommend shadowing, listening to a sentence and repeating it immediately, copying the rhythm and intonation.
Yes, it's like borrowing the confidence of a native speaker for a few seconds.
And it trains your mouth and brain to work together quickly, so you can respond faster in real conversations.
Here's a final thought. Speaking confidently is not about knowing everything. It's about knowing enough to keep going and having the courage to try.
Exactly.
Even with 500 words, you can have deep, interesting conversations if you use them creatively.
And every conversation you have will teach you something new. A word, a phrase, a cultural tip.
So don't wait for someday when your English is perfect. Speak now, make mistakes, laugh, and keep going.
Because confidence doesn't come before speaking. It comes from speaking.
David, after everything we've shared today, I think the most important step for our listeners is to start thinking in English as much as possible.
Absolutely. Surround yourself with the language. Narrate your day, label objects, use mental images. Every small habit adds up.
And don't worry if you don't know every word. Fluency isn't about perfection. It's about making connections and using what you know confidently.
Exactly. The more you practice thinking in English, the easier it becomes to speak naturally and respond quickly in conversations.
So, dear listener, here's a challenge for you today. Pick one activity, maybe making breakfast, walking, or even waiting for the bus, and narrate it in English in your head.
Yes, even 1 minute is powerful. Try to describe everything you see, everything you do in English without translating.
And remember, every time you do this, you're training your brain to think directly in English, which is a huge step toward fluency.
Thank you for spending time with us today on Way to Fluency. We hope these tips help you grow your vocabulary and start thinking in English more naturally.
Keep practicing, enjoy the process, and don't forget, even small daily steps lead to big progress.
See you next time, and happy learning.